Well, welcome everyone. I'm Jason Rantanen. I'm a professor here at the University of Iowa College of Law, and I'm also the director of the Iowa Innovation Business and Law Center. As the director of the Iowa Innovation Business and Law Center, one of the things that we do and our funding is for is to bring scholars and practitioners and judges to campus to talk about issues at the cutting edge of law and technology, healthcare, to really deal with some of the hard questions that our society deals with in terms of technological innovation. And so it was an absolute delight when my colleague, Professor Prince, came to me to suggest that we host the Regulation and Innovation in the Biosciences workshop. And I was absolutely thrilled at the opportunity. And as part of that workshop, we are bringing together our speakers to talk about some of the issues that they deal with. But this isn't a traditional long form talk where someone talks for 20 or 30 minutes. These are going to be lightning talks on key issues that they talk about and think about and research on. So I'm absolutely delighted for this program. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Anya Prince, who will introduce our speakers.
Thank you so much, Jason, and thank you to the IBL for having us and hosting us and showing us a lovely time. And thank you to all of the speakers for traveling to Iowa. So the first speaker today is Rachel Sachs. She's a nationally renowned scholar of innovation policy, exploring intellectual property law, food and drug regulation, and health law. Her scholarship has appeared in journals including the NYU Law Review, the Michigan Law Review, the Harvard Law Review, the New England Journal of Medicine, and the Journal of American Medical Association. Prior to joining Washington University of Law in St. Louis, she was an academic fellow at the Petrie-Flom Center for Health Law Policy, Biotechnology, and Bioethics, and a lecturer in law at Harvard Law School. So welcome, Rachel.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And thank you so much to Jason and everyone at Iowa IBL. You've been such wonderful hosts for us for this event. And I know I can speak for us all when we say thank you. We're very grateful for your support. And I know what an incredible convening role you've played for the community as a whole. It really matters. So this project is about the ways in which the landscape of venture capital investment in healthcare has been changing in recent years with some new entrants. And specifically, the way it's changing to incorporate venture capital firms that are arms of either hospital systems or of health insurers. The legal literature hasn't really contemplated these types of venture capital investors yet, but we should think differently about health innovation policy as it relates to the unique institutional role that these actors may have. And that's my goal in this project. So first, I want to describe the role that health system and health insurance venture capital firms are playing in health innovation. I want to explore how they behave differently from standard venture capital firms, what might be motivating them, and then to examine potential implications for health innovation policy as a legal matter and as a policy matter. So let's start with one such example. Some people may be familiar with Ascension. This is one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States. They have more than 143 hospitals in 19 states and the District of Columbia. But more recently, they started up Ascension Ventures. This is their venture capital arm. And if you go to their website, they say, we're not your typical venture fund focused solely on returns. They also operate as a healthcare provider. And if you read, it talks about one of the ways in which they work is they add value by sharing their portfolio companies' solutions across their limited partner base. Let me translate that. What that means is when they're acting as a venture capital firm, they're not just investing money in some of these health tech startups, they're also giving those startups access to their data, access to their healthcare data that they have, to enable the tech startups they're investing in to train their data, right? To train their model, on relevant data to think about how to apply it to different types of technologies. This is a tool that a traditional venture capitalist doesn't have, right? If you're just a traditional venture capitalist and you're investing money, you don't have hundreds of thousands or even millions of patients' data at your disposal. So this may be especially attractive if you're a healthcare startup. You might be pitching different VCs because they might have different types of resources for you. But overall, it's also changing the types of health tech startups that are attractive to some of these VCs. Now, there has been some literature looking at the rise of health system VCs Here is one study, and I apologize that it's not going to be easy to read the axes, but basically what I'll say is that over time, the investments made by the healthcare system investors have increased substantially, but they remain a relatively small portion of overall investment in health tech startups, which have also grown quite significantly. So these do remain a relatively small portion of the market, but they have increased in the same way as the overall interest in health tech startups has increased. Another example in the health insurance context, we might start with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which many people are likely to have heard of. These are on a different scale than the largest hospital system. So Blue Cross Blue Shield covers more than 100 million people in the United States, right? That's just a different scale than even a hospital system with 100 hospitals. But we've also got the Blue Venture Fund. And the Blue Venture Fund, right, they're focused on innovating in the healthcare industry. And much as we see with the announcements of some of these venture funds in the health system context, it says the fund has well-established programs for introducing portfolio companies to Blue plans to drive significant revenue distribution and partnership opportunities. So just as with the health systems, part of the goal here is not just to invest financial capital in these health tech startups, but also to give them access to data, give them access to people and the ability to implement and train the models that they're thinking about. And this is new relative to the overall health venture capital space. So why are we seeing this? What are the motivations of some of these companies? Why might they be operating in this way? One is that they're operating both as potential sellers, but also as potential users. This is different, again, from the traditional health VC model. They want not only to use this technology they're investing in, either to lower their cost of care or to increase their revenues, but they also want to develop a product that they're then able to sell more broadly. You might imagine that the relative scales of these motivations would differ between the health system VCs and the health insurance VCs, especially to the extent that some of the health insurers are just so much larger, right? If you're BCBS and you cover 100 million people in the US, you're one of the largest insurers. Actually, maybe the difference that you can make in your own revenues and costs is just different than if you're Ascension and you know that you're still a minority of all the hospitals in the US. So that's a little bit different. Health insurance VCs are likely motivated by part of the Affordable Care Act's legal requirements. So there's something called the medical loss ratio in the Affordable Care Act that essentially caps health insurance profits. And because of that, health insurance companies are motivated to diversify their investments. So if they can take a portion of that profit and put it into a venture capital firm, they can generate more revenue outside of the ACA sort of regulated scope, and they're feeling pressure to do that. And then health system VCs, most of the time, health systems are nonprofit. And so for them to spin off these for-profit venture capital arms raises additional questions that they're likely to have to consider about whether they continue complying with their community benefit standards, other existing law, while they're diverting some of their nonprofit funds to these more for-profit purposes. So these are some of the concerns that end up arising. These are some of the motivations that hospitals and health systems are dealing with. And then one final slide, because I know we're short on time. There's a lot of potential implications here for health innovation because these new health VCs don't fit into sort of the traditional health innovation paradigms. They sit in between them. So they're not quite user innovators because they are motivated by the goal to sell these technologies more broadly, but they're not pure seller innovators either. They're a little bit different than a large academic medical center, which is going to spin off companies that are founded by some of the researchers there. That's also a slightly different model from the venture capital model where you're investing in outside companies. And then in many, although surely not all of these, there's the lack of a traditional regulatory overlay. So many of these technologies will not require FDA approval. They will not be separately reimbursed by insurers. And so there's some question about quality control, and there's been a growing literature on potential problems of bias in medical AI specifically that could potentially be of concern here. And so I'll just close by saying that it is possible that these VCs could have both positive and negative implications for innovation. And that's something I'm continuing to explore as I work on this project. Thank you all.